Welcome. It is no accident that you have found your way to the Release the Genie podcast. What would you do with 3 wishes? And what if you discovered that you are, in fact, that very genie that could grant them? Well, join us now as we discover who our next genie is as we listen in and learn the stories of triumph, inspiration, and passion with some very special guests. And now, without further delay, your host of the Release the Genie podcast, Mr. Paul Rogers.
That's so much better. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're tuning in from. I am your host, Paul Rogers, and welcome to another episode of Release the Genie. Oh my God, I've got a wonderful genie today, the wonderful Jenny Olson. Now, she's been slaying it on LinkedIn. She's got a couple of new projects which are just really, really amazing, and a story which will blow your mind. So, Jenny, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
It's awesome to have you here, and thank you for making time in your busy schedule to be the guest genie today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Excellent, excellent. Well, look, I've said a little bit of the backstory, so I wonder if you could just tell me a little bit more.
Well, my journey kind of started about 13 years ago. My husband and I found out that we were expecting our first child, and we didn't think we were going to be able to have one. So that alone was a surprise. And then into the pregnancy a little ways, I was about 31 weeks and I started to go into preterm labor.
Oh.
I was put on bed rest and was told I would be in the hospital for 6 weeks on bed rest, and didn't even make it 24 hours.
Oh.
They did. Yes. So they did an emergency C-section, and our son joined us 2 pounds, 3 ounces.
Oh.
And 14 inches long. So he was a little guy. And so we spent exactly 2 months in our local NICU with him until he got to kind of like a normal birth weight, before we could bring him home. And so brought him home and, went through all the fun things that you get to do with the preemie, monitors. And they always got a kick out of him because he was never on oxygen. It's very rare that a little one that tiny doesn't have to, but he came out, screaming, and he was ready, man. He in fact, we named him Will, and it's turned out to be, as you will hear, a complete blessing that he was named Will, because he is so strong-willed. Definitely gets that from me.
Wow.
Yes. And then, so when he was 2, as a lot of times in the summer, there's a summertime bug that goes around, and he just wasn't feeling good and just wasn't getting better. And my mom instinct just said that something was really, really wrong. I could just feel it. I didn't want to listen to it, but I knew that I just really needed to listen to, what was kind of being pushed inside. And so I just kept pushing the doctors and pushing them. And one doctor looked at me and said, you're a first-time mom. You've not done this before. Just give him the meds and go home.
Oh, so it's basically, thank you very much. Take your medicine and yeah.
Yeah, one of those. And you don't tell any mom that, but especially a first-time mom. And so his pediatrician actually was on vacation, which is why we couldn't go. He got back and I just said, listen, Will went through occupational therapy, once he was, got to about a year old, because of the preemie issues, but he has just really regressed and something just seems off. And so they sent him for some more labs and an ultrasound and sent us on our way. And we thought, okay, they usually don't send you on your way if, there's something wrong.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, we kind of rely on them on when I say them, the medical profession, to if there's going to be something, they tell you about it. Now, I got a feeling that there's going to be an aha moment coming up. So I'm going to let you
There is.
proceed on that. So go on. What's the next day?
So my phone rings and I thought, oh, it's the doctor's office, no big deal. And that's one of the moments I'll never forget where I was, standing in the hospital cafeteria. And the doctor got really quiet and he said, you need to go to the University Children's Hospital. We found a very large mass on Will's liver.
Oh, no.
And, it's one of those things where, you hear mass and you're like, oh, you think of everything it could be, but, that dreaded C word, And so I had known him. He had been my pediatrician. And so that was why he couldn't tell us in person. He couldn't compose himself. He was just really struggling. And so I said to him, I said, listen, I know you're not supposed to say this, but are we dealing with cancer? I mean, that's the only thing I could think to ask. And he got really quiet and he's like, yeah, I'm about, 98% sure we're dealing with cancer. And I just, thank goodness for walls because I just leaned against the wall. I mean, my husband was a little ways away and I'll never forget him saying, he goes, I knew when you were on the phone, he goes, your face changed, your color changed. I knew that you had gotten some really bad news. I just didn't know what.
Wow. I mean, that's nobody, and especially a mother, should ever go through that. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a bit difficult to, and you're still here, and Will's still here too.
He is. His odds were, so when we got to the hospital that evening, of course, everything's kind of a whirlwind, and after a few days they of course stage it, and he was a stage 3 liver cancer. I believe it was 3B because there's like A, B, and C, but it was stage 3. It had not quite metastasized, but the tumor was still massive. It was pressing on his stomach. And so, one of the things, the internet is such a wonderful tool and it's been great, but I just couldn't be on it looking up, everything there was to know about childhood, liver cancer. And so, but once, we kind of got through the worst of it, obviously, it was several months. We found out his chance of survival was around 5 to 10%.
Seriously?
With his massive, yep.
Oh my goodness.
It was massive. It had wrapped around the hepatic vein, which is, it's crucial to survival. And it just like grabbed on and just messed with the wrong mama for sure.
You see, and this is kind of, you knew that there was something wrong. You that's your mother instinct.
Mm-hmm.
That's if it, walk me through. If it hadn't been for you actually tapping into that, things may have turned out very differently.
It's funny that you say that because his pediatrician had told me, I had just told him I had gotten so much pushback with urgent care. And he looked at me one day and he said, don't you ever question your pushing and your, like your sixth sense or your discernment. He said, because that is probably what saved his life. He said, because you knew, and he's like, a mom just knows.
Yeah.
They know when something is so off. So he just said, you're a big part of the reason he's here. And my husband will say that to me, and that's so hard to wrap your mind around. You're like, well, I just feel like I did what I had to do.
But you see, that in a way has given you so much power to actually, and to have something which is uncontrollable, to actually say, no, I made a difference. And you hear a lot of people talk about impact and making a difference. You did, and continue to do so. That's beautiful, beautiful. Well, look, this is going to be so interesting. What was the sort of the quote or mantra that maybe pulled you through, or something which you remember from that time or afterwards?
I think the biggest thing for me was probably, I was raised in a very Christian home, and one of the things that just kind of kept popping up was a verse that I've always held on to, and it was Jeremiah 29:11, and it says, "For I know the plans I have for you," and it just kept popping up like everywhere I went, and that was just something, that I needed to kind of cling to, especially, you had a child who was a preemie, and you thought you'd probably been through the worst of it, and then here you are facing, cancer, and not knowing the outcome. And so I just kind of, continued to hold on to that, and that piece of my faith, because you just, when you're going through, I mean, it's truly hell on earth, you just have to hold on to something. You have to cling to something, because even the doctors, as much as they can, do what they can with medicine and help you and everything, they can't tell you the outcome. They've seen cases that have just blown them away, and I really think Will was one of them.
I mean, that's amazing, because and anyone who is nowadays, it's actually somebody always knows someone, or has had that. So
Right.
the question which I got asked a lot was, well, how do you do it? And
Yeah.
I never came up with a real answer for that.
It is, that's a tough one, and people would be like, well, I just don't know how you did it. And it's like, that's kind of, it's just kind of, that's the hand I was dealt. I mean, I don't know, like, how could you not do it? I think, I've said before, sometimes, I wish I had that crystal ball to see what's coming next. But then, after having gone through Will's journey, I'm like, well, maybe I'm kind of glad I didn't, because if I would have known that was coming, that just would have been, this level of fear that would have just
It'd have
continued to
paralyzed
grow.
you, wouldn't
Yeah,
it?
exactly.
And sometimes foresight and is not actually a good thing. It actually just makes
Right.
things worse. So that's a really vivid example of that. So wow. Well, look, I'm going to change direction now, because
Sure.
I know that you are a passionate advocate of children's cancer and cancer just generally. So what are you working on at the moment? Because there's a couple of projects you've sort of, yeah, look at that smile. Look, there's a couple of projects. So tell us what you can about what you're doing.
Sure. Right now with an organization, I won't say too much who they are just yet, until they decide, but I'm working on collaborating with some fundraising for them, and it would, benefit other families. And the nice thing about the organization is it's not just families with cancer, it's with kiddos who, um, have those long-term diagnoses, or have, terminal. There's so many different things. And I've got so many friends who have kiddos who, have lifelong conditions that affect them forever. So, and we actually got to meet them on the journey. So that's pretty exciting. If this all works out, to be able to collaborate with this place. And I'm even doing some assisting for a musical artist right now, kind of keeping her privacy a little bit as well. But it's just, it all kind of fits together kind of with, my mission, and kind of what's important to me. And I'm excited to see how they all, kind of come together and connect.
And anyone who's listening would say, well, to be honest, you're kind of forgiven for having something now, which actually is and anyone who's listening or watching who is involved with fundraising or anything else, I mean, what would you like to say to them if there was people out there?
It's funny because, that's two things that became important to me, was speaking and fundraising, especially for pediatric. For us, it kind of touched us with pediatric cancer. And we have a local radiothon that would be on every year, and they would play these stories. You'd sit in your car and cry, and it doesn't hit you the same as when it happens. And I always said, it's not happening to you until it happens to you.
Mm.
And so, I think we just never know what hand we're going to be dealt. And so if there is something that's important to you, or you have a friend whose, child has a cancer, or, not even just children, I guess, other adults you're trying to raise money for, do it, go for it. Don't be afraid to, reach out to ask. There's so many people who want to help it, and they don't always know how. And, especially when it comes to, families of children, they don't know how to ask for help, and it's hard to know how you can help them in return sometimes.
You're right, because there is no rule book or a book you can go and find all the answers in. It's people like yourself who actually are open to help other people who may be going through something like that.
Absolutely.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, look, now we're going to move on to the second part of the show, which is the time. And this is going to, with all that experience and everything you've just said, this is going to be amazing. So I get to ask you for 3 wishes. So are you ready, Genie?
I am.
Okie dokie, here we go. So wish number 1, what was the best advice you have received in your life?
Oh my goodness. Oh, you like to ask the really deep questions, don't you?
Hey, I want a good wish.
Sure. I think the best advice is be prepared. And I know it's kind of like, what does that mean? I think that, whether it's a faith or some sort of foundation that you have, be ready for that. I mean, we don't know what life is going to throw our way. There is just absolutely no way to know. And I think being prepared, just having all your ducks in a row as much as possible, just, take advantage of that, and just really, I think at the same time, know that you can find that within you. You're stronger than you think.
I love that. And it's so, so true. Looking inwards, because actually when everything goes to hell in a handbasket,
Yes.
you do need, and I love what you said there about getting your ducks in a row. Do it when you're strong.
Yep.
Because that's going to bail you when in fact, if things actually don't work out. Wow. Well, that's that. I think that's great. Simple, but hugely effective. Wow. Well, now we're going to move on to wish number 2, and you'll like this one. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh, I would say the number one thing, I have found this as a repetitive kind of message throughout life, is to know that no matter what, no matter who you become, no matter how you get there, you are enough. And it's 3 words, but you are enough. I have not went down the path that I thought I would. When I was in 8th grade, all the way until I was a senior, believe it or not, I was going to be an attorney. And people told me I should, because I like to argue. But my husband would probably agree with that. But but you're enough. It doesn't matter. You were created for a purpose, and I would not have guessed, I would be here, talking with you, doing speaking, even collaborating with an organization. I mean, there's so many things. And sometimes, it's that whole thing. I just have to pinch myself to realize, is this what I'm actually doing?
And I know there was a film that particularly inspired you on your potential attorney route. Would you like to share that with us?
I can do that. So Legally Blonde was one that I rented over and over. And, like I've said, a good 90 minutes, and I'm a certified attorney after watching the movie. And it's kind of like, watching certain medical shows. I think I can do surgery now. I'm sure the doctors and lawyers will be quite
yeah, they're already got their pens ready. I can hear the feather quills in the ink pot. So that's wonderful. I love that. I love it. And your ability to laugh, because you've got such a warm personality. I think that ability, we can feel it coming off you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, there's been a couple of times, we've just decided that there's so many big things that happen in life. We've had to find humor, and there are a couple of things, I've shared with people after we went through the journey, and they're completely horrified as I'm sitting there, with tears rolling down my face, laughing because, it's just I had to find the humor in it.
Important lessons there, and it's kind of like two wishes for one on that one, so I kind of sneaked that one through. So now we're going to move on to my third and final wish, which is I wonder if you could share one personal habit that attributes to your success.
I think, for me, one of the biggest things is journaling. I keep a notebook with me at all times. I have found, and it's crazy because I have found some of the most inconvenient times are the most inspirational. And it's really frustrating when it's, when you're in the shower or when you're driving. And so that makes it tough. So thank goodness for, cell phones and being able to talk into it when there's notes. But, whether it's just, kind of, what's going on, what's happening, thoughts, ideas, inspirations. I have went back to them a lot, taking notes, something I've heard. And sometimes, that alone, you can kind of combine it all together, and it can turn into something bigger and better.
Wonderful. And a really good creative outlet as well.
It is. It really is.
Awesome. Well, look, we're drawing sadly to near the end, but there's a couple of last things which I'd like to ask you, which is, is there a book or an audio which you would recommend, or one which keep going back to?
I think one of my favorites, and it's a really, really old one, is I love Dale Carnegie. And one of the ones is somebody who, obviously who wanted to be an attorney, kind of got that type A personality. His book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And it is just fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And I don't think you can go wrong with any, of Dale Carnegie's books. He also does the How to Win Friends and Influence People. But I would say the first one, the How to Stop Worrying, it's been highlighted and marked up quite a bit in this house.
No, I know what you mean by sort of pages folded down.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's very difficult on a tablet to start folding things down. They don't usually last very long.
This is true. This is very true.
So look, where can we get hold of you? Because, if the people want to reach out, people want to help you on your journey, where can we get hold of you?
Sure. So actually, I'm just kind of in the beginnings of creating my site. And so it's under construction now. So if you go to it, it's going to look very, very much under construction. But I have somebody who's working diligently in the back scenes. But it is www.dreamyourheartout.com. And that's going to be, just kind of the story, kind of what's coming up next. There's a few other things in the works, possibly. We'll just mention courses. We'll see, what happens with those. That's probably the best place. And, I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn as well. And, more than happy to share those links. And,
Awesome.
When this is shared, to connect with me.
Awesome. Well, look, we've got it there. Wonderful, wonderful story. Thank you so much for sharing that and the lessons you've learned, because that is going to help so many people.
Thank you.
And you've heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. What a wonderful story. And if that's inspired and moved you, please reach out to Jenny. You can see she's a lot of fun as well. So even if you're having a blue day, that won't be afterwards. So thank you once again.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. And everyone, make sure you feel inspired and release your genie. Until next time, thank you very much.
Well, that's a wrap. You have been listening to yet another episode of the Release the Genie podcast with host Paul Rogers. Be sure to follow Paul on the LinkedIn platform and learn more of Paul's resources at www.takeactionacademy.ca. And until next time, as always, be mindful and be sure to release your genie. Thanks for listening.